Now,
That's our casual is like the nice word for unprofessional. Yeah. So,
I'm so professional.
Relaxed.
yeah, sure.
It's going to be my living from now on.
So here we are with Joe Sikoryak, creator of When We Were Trekkies.
Hi, guys.
Here, issue 1.
Hello.
Which we managed to score at Jim Hanley's Universe here on Staten Island. Where are we talking to you, by the way?
I'm in my basement lair in San Francisco.
Oh, nice. Very nice. San Francisco.
You've been there your whole life? San Francisco?
No, I moved to California in 1977. In fact, I saw a certain space movie at a terrific large theater out here
Nice.
4 or 5 times.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now, where are you originally from?
I'm originally from New Jersey, central New Jersey.
Okay.
With a lot of roots in New York City.
Is it Manville? Are you actually from Manville?
I am actually from Manville.
Okay, so that's part of this. Okay, so I'm going to guess and say that the Jonathan character is based on you. Is that right?
Johnny.
Yeah, John.
Guy in the middle.
Yep, John Korshak.
You were right when we were discussing it.
Yeah, see?
Nice call.
So yeah, so you're there you go. So you're John, in essence,
Yes.
kind of a version of John is a version of you. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. The tricky thing about doing memoir is if you want to write about people who are still alive, not everybody's happy about being depicted.
Yes.
So I need a little deniability, and everybody's name is changed. But the more famous they were, the less likely I was to change their names. So Gene Roddenberry shows up, and I don't change his name because that's what he said, and he's a public figure.
Yeah. Sure. And
but some of the girls we were chasing, I had to be a little more discreet.
Right. Of course. Yeah. And the other 4 guys are genuinely based on other people, or are they sort of amalgams?
Yes.
People?
Yes. Well, so let me back up a second. Let me introduce this. So.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So When We Were Trekkies is my mostly true memoir of comics of 4 guys in high school who started going to fan conventions in the 70s.
Right.
And the story is about, cosplay, conventions, collecting, and coming of age.
Right.
So there's a lot of stupid behavior in these books based on real life experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the thing I really like about it is that you do really capture the way fandom was before the internet,
Well,
yes.
before it was very popular. Before it was an acceptable means, right? Before,
when you and maybe 3 other people you knew were the entire fandom that you've ever heard of.
And you hid your fandom from everyone outside of that.
That's right. And I learned the hard way to reveal my fandom sometimes had consequences.
Yeah.
Same here with us. We're a little bit younger than you we think based on your story, but not that much younger than you, because we grew up majority of our time was in the 80s, and we felt the same thing. You hid that you were a comic book collector from everyone else, except maybe that 1-2 kids that were also comic book collectors. And it was like we have Jim Hanley Universe has been our comic shop for a very long time. And when I was in my teen years, I would sneak there with a friend, and I didn't want anyone to know that that's where I was going. No, it's not anymore.
I was very fortunate. I grew up with 2 brothers who also were in comics. I was the oldest, and I sort of fed that to them. We carved up the Marvel universe between us. I said, well, I want Fantastic Four, I want Thor, I want Nick Fury, basically all the Jack Kirby titles, and you guys can have the rest. And so, my brother Steve, who was next in line, got Spider-Man, got Submariner and the Hulk, and then my youngest brother Rob, was like, well, what's left over? Daredevil?
You had a superhero draft. That is awesome.
And there was a fantastic store at the Englishtown flea market in New Jersey. A guy named Herman Neuberger had come into possession of a stockpile of 60s marbles. And we would go down there, and he was walled off. And he just had a little window, and you'd say, "Do you have any Fantastic Fours before 50?" And he'd come back with like 6 of them.
Oh boy,
50 cents a piece.
Wow, that's what I'm trying
in
to
the
put that together now.
And then, we're asking for, he says, "Look, what do you want?" And we said, "Well, I want to get all the Fantastic Fours. So I'll see what I got." And he came back with like 22 between, 30 and 100. They were all 50 cents a piece.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, they'd just been in stacks. And so like we would go back until, we got, and that was the foundation of our collection.
Wow, that's great.
You still have it?
I have a few of them. Yeah. I don't have them handy, but
that's
I
awesome
do.
though, that's you paid for them for 50 cents for them back in the 70s. And
Well, that didn't last for long. Everywhere else they were expensive.
Once it blew up, it got crazy quickly.
So,
but that was part of the experience from this time that I was writing.
Was the conveying of that experience kind of like the main motivation behind doing the memoir?
Yeah, well, part of it is, so the first convention I went to was 50 years ago next month.
Okay.
Wow.
I was 16 years old then. I'm now at a time in my life when I, doing a little life review. What did it all mean?
Yeah.
And part of this was, I was a frustrated filmmaker. I came to California to make movies, and it didn't work out.
Okay.
I ended up being a graphic designer. I made some short films. I had some success with that. But I had big stories I wanted to tell. How else can I tell them? Well, I can draw and I can write.
Right.
So I can make comics.
Yeah.
And this was the first best story I could tell because I had a lot of pent up emotion around it and great research.
Yeah. It's funny. There's something you just reminded me of with I think it was Joan Didion who said something like the reason she wrote was in order to understand things, that she couldn't understand something unless she wrote about it, and especially things from her own life, like her memories, her experiences, that if she didn't write them, then she couldn't truly understand what they meant. And that's kind of gets at like what you're saying here as far as this memoir goes, is like you're attempting to sort of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, well no, and this what happened was when I finally gave up the ghost, and I was literally trying to make a feature film before COVID hit, and it was just like this ain't happening.
Sure.
So I put together a scrapbook of my adventures in cosplay from the 70s.
Oh,
I had these pictures. That's me. It's a Klingon there in the middle.
Right, and this isn't part of the book.
Part of
the book.
Yeah.
The first
and
issue.
so I put together this actually, some of my friends who are in the book had already put together a photo album, but it was yellowed and sticky and brown. And so I scanned everything, organized it, and in the organization and saying like, oh, wait a minute, this couldn't have been, how many Star Trek? There were 3 Star Trek conventions that month.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I sort things out and I kind of teased it apart. And so, my friend Larry, who's one of the 5, had taken these pictures where he met Nichelle Nichols and James Doohan and George Takei, all the same thing. The woman in the center here in the revealing outfit is Angelique Travers, who is a well-known cosplayer for 20 years. And she showed up all the time. She's a character in the book.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I don't know how many issues you've seen.
We've managed to get our hands on one.
They had issue number 1.
That's all they had.
I'm up to issue 9.
Okay, so we got to get out there and order it.
And here's Angelique again on the end, dressed in her outfit, and all these other costumes. Most of these other costumes appeared at the convention, and it's just when I did the album, I put it together and I said, "Holy smokes, this is a story."
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I broke it down into 10 issues.
That is great.
So issue 9 is out already. Like these are out.
Yes.
Oh, because we only in our comic shop they only had issue 1, and we happened to be there at a Christmas party, and we saw this on a shelf, and we were like, "This looks awesome!" And that's right after that party. I messaged you and was like, "It looks awesome. It's what we like."
It gets a lot better if you ask me. So thank you for
we're gonna go out and we'll search the rest of these out.
So here's a little sneak at issue 9. And
is that someone in the middle dressed as the Horda?
No, that's Yarnak.
Oh, okay.
A rock monster with Lincoln and Sarek and some other.
I think Lincoln. Lincoln is.
So was it really carpet adhesive? Was that really what you were using?
Oh yeah.
Oh, that is so dangerous.
We took our lives in our hands regularly. Yes. I mean, I just shudder to think. I grew up in a town where they made asbestos, and that wasn't threatening enough. I had to inflict all this makeup stuff on me.
Right.
Well, so I take to tell the story, this big scope of what it was like being a fan and going to the first conventions that were out of control.
Sure.
Run by fans, and I love the fact that I can get these vintage buses and stuff in here.
Did you get involved at all in the actual creation of conventions, or you just continue to attend?
I just continue to attend, but one of the characters in his story is someone who worked there, that we talked to a little bit,
right? And
so
let's say we want to get these from you, but we can't get them at our local comic store. Can we order them directly from you on your website?
Yes, actually, on my website is a link to my distributor, Birdcage Bottom Books.
Okay. Okay.
And you can buy them individually. We're also selling them as bundles, and they're cheaper as a bundle.
Perfect.
So we'll check out
in the video too.
Yeah, we'll have that in.
We'll link that in the video.
Yeah, so people can pick them up.
Yeah, it's something we like. We're actually, I don't know if you read a lot of comics still. We're reading another comic very similar to this, written by Nathan Van Sciver, Ethan Van Sciver's brother. He's writing about them growing up.
Maple Terrace.
It's called. It's them growing up in the 90s, getting into comic books at a time where it was becoming a little more popular, but still was kind of not out in the open, hidden there.
Yeah.
We paid our dues, man.
Yeah.
Growing up in those days.
You paved the way for us because and I have 2 younger children. I have my 2 daughters are collectors also. They don't realize that there was a time where we had to hide this. For them, it's always been out there. They collect, and my youngest is a big collector. She flaunts, who she is. She wears superhero shirts. She, buys the comics, buys the posters. She has it. Her whole life is decorating that. She doesn't have to worry about, sneaking in the dark and no one knows that it's you.
This, it's like the same story with feminism. Now the kids, the girls now who can just, get jobs that they want and dress, as slutty as they want or what have you. And they don't understand. They're standing on the shoulders of these women who are like burning their bras and fighting for them. And there's a lot, that's a theme in the book too, is sort of this like, the rise of gay rights and women, feminism and stuff. I mean, it's not a big deal, but it's a subcurrent in the story I'm telling, because it was really in the conventions. The conventions were really about people who wanted to change the world.
Right.
Well, and I think there's still some of that optimism in the conventions, but conventions are much more now about sports teams. Like, I like Star Trek. I like Star Wars.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, we just went to the most recent New York Comic Con, and it has changed a lot. I haven't been in years, but it really has changed.
I go every year. I take my kids every year, but
it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's exhausting.
It's too much.
But I have to say, I think we both spoke about this frequently, where we just prefer smaller conventions. We just like the smaller ones because they're more about the fandom itself. It's not about pay attention for our next thing coming. Right. That's what conventions have kind of turned into, is this sort of
salesman. There's a bunch of salesmen.
Yeah, marketing push behind everything.
They've become very adept at separating fans from their money.
They have very good, yeah. And what you're writing about in this comic is more about building a community and not so much about just trying to make a quick buck on whatever,
I've attended some Zoom meetings with fans even older than me, who are like college students and older at those Star Trek cons. They were huge hookup sites because it was like, you like Star Trek? Me too. Come on, let's go upstairs.
That's funny.
Well, and you can make jokes about it, but the hormones were evenly distributed through all teenagers, whether they're Star Trek fans or not.
But they still are today, though, too, because they have all those
of course
meetings.
Yeah.
Things.
But it was just also just a sense of purpose because, when I started going, Star Trek had been off the air for 4 years.
Yep.
The animated series had just started, and I wasn't quite too sure about that because it was like I was an animation fan, and I'm like, this is no Johnny Quest,
right?
And this is definitely not Walt Disney,
right? Yeah.
So I was kind of like, the cheap animation kind of turned me off a little bit. I've come to like it better now, but what I try to put here in the back of every issue is ephemera stuff from the particular shows we're at.
We
photos like of my friend.
Yeah, I this as soon as I saw it, I love this because this reminds me a lot of the kind of thing I would see in my cousins or my uncles' collections, and it just again that connects to that whole the famous monsters of Filmland stuff and make your own monster masks, and these are things that don't really exist anymore. This kind of idea, these sort of pieces of ephemera that you're talking about, they capture that time really, really well,
and that's what's so good about this. You're really capturing a moment in time almost perfectly before it becomes what it is now,
right?
So hopefully some younger readers are reading this to see that this is, like you said earlier, it's built on the shoulder. You guys built this to what it is today. Without you guys, there's nothing like what we have today.
Yeah.
And it's nice to hear about, the past of collecting and how it started. You're at the beginning of the growth of collecting at that point.
In episode 4, when we go to the Famous Monsters convention, I have a couple of pages of just rummaging through the boxes, and the dealers' rooms were much smaller.
Yeah.
The choice, would be like, wow, there's another Star Trek novelization, or wow, they've actually got a monster mask for the mummy. I mean, it was just unheard of.
Right. And now we're just deluged with that stuff. Yeah.
Well, this is all taking place pre-real comic shops, right? Like, there's not a lot of comic shops at this time.
Yes, I mean, actually, comic book store shows up in the first issue, but it was like it was basically some guy's collection on tables in a storefront.
Right.
And maybe he had a couple of, rock and roll posters on the wall and maybe a movie poster or something. Yeah. But there was just none of the stuff available to us. And I think it was wonderful because I like to say it's like dry farming, where they give tomatoes just enough water to grow and they taste really good. They're really sweet, but they're struggling for every drop. And that's what it was for us as fans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you worked so hard to find a back issue. And it's like, holy smokes, there's Fantastic 449. The Galactus issue. I've been looking for this for years.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah. You just heard of it.
Right.
And you find it. And it's so potent.
Right. I wanted to ask you, because I've recently started watching Star Trek again. I hadn't watched for years and years and years. And it was one of the reasons that I was drawn to this too, and I saw it, is that I recently kind of rediscovered Star Trek. I'm starting to watch some of the new shows now and rewatch the old ones that I liked. I really haven't watched it since I was much younger. Why Star Trek? Why do you think Star Trek was this sort of thing that attracted people like you and all these other fans? What's your take on it?
Star Trek was, was ground zero for a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, I think it spoke to young people in the 60s, for starters.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go back and watch TV from the 60s, it's like, on one hand, technically, it's very polished. It's very slick. Because it's either all these old movie vets dumbing down into TV on their way out.
Yeah.
And all these exciting new actors. You go watch an old episode of The Invaders, and, oh my God, there's Gene Hackman, or there's, John Voight, or somebody who would go on to be more famous.
Yeah.
But most of the shows are just stupid. Star Trek wasn't stupid.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It may look stupid now, but at the time it was like they're trying to do something. They're trying to tell a story that has some meaning, some morality.
Mm-hmm.
And, famously, just like Twilight Zone, Gene Roddenberry wanted to find a way to write about sex and politics and things that just wasn't, allowed. But if the people who were talking about it were blue or green, you could get away with it.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're sneaking in stuff under the radar.
Yeah.
And, just so many guys, we were all captivated by the gadgets, I mean, my phone is, where did that come from?
Right.
That came from, future engineers seeing that thing saying, I want to make one of those.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's the thing I've been sort of rediscovering about Star Trek too, is that so much science fiction is dour and predicts shipwreck.
What you said,
which isn't necessarily, doesn't necessarily make it bad. But you do need a little bit of hope in there too, and, it's kind of, I'm happy that there are new versions coming out now, because for so long, sci-fi has been very, very depressing. Like if you look at the most popular science fiction show of the late 60s is Star Trek, where you have like these, the United Nations in space, everything's going great. A couple of years ago, the most popular science fiction show on television was a group of haggard survivors fighting zombies, trying to eat out a miserable existence, and like, what happened? What happened to us, in that time period?
You're right.
So I continue to turn to Star Trek. I like the new episode. I like a lot of the new shows, and something like For All Mankind on Apple, which is the alternate universe telling of what the space program might have been like if we didn't stop at the moon.
Right.
And who's it created by? Ron Moore, who worked on Star Trek for 10 years. So it's like, it's got a good legacy.
Yeah. Is that the same? Tell me I don't know if anybody knows. Was Ron Moore the guy who also rebooted Battlestar Galactica?
That's the guy.
Yeah. That was a great show. That's fantastic.
So,
yeah. So,
thank God he's around.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what else are you watching or fanning on right now?
Well, I just finished For All Mankind. I mean, the first couple of seasons, I just couldn't wait for the next one to come out.
Right.
As far as Star Trek is concerned, I still like, I think Strange New Worlds is my second favorite Star Trek series ever.
It's so good.
There are people who will complain about, how they're trying to, like, wow, Spock sneezed in one episode in the original, so now they're going to have 3 episodes explaining why he sneezed. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah,
the cast is good, and it's got an upbeat tone. And even though they have to have more bang bang and shoot 'em up than the original series could ever have afforded,
right?
I don't care. It's like it's still delivering,
and it really is one of the, since Next Generation, it's one of the few shows that seems to have the spirit of the actual original show in it. Yeah.
And people can gripe all they want, but it's like, come on, folks.
Yeah.
It's make believe.
Right.
Let me have a little make believe that doesn't involve, bashing people in the head with baseball bats.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yes. And you just reminded me of that. Is we talk a lot about Star Wars, because I was 4 or 5 when Star Wars came out.
Yeah.
And I think my parents took me to see, I asked them to take me to see it multiple times. Since I was that age, I was obsessed with it.
Same here.
And now you hear a lot of people sort of complaining about the new stuff and putting it down. And we can't quite understand, like, to us who went through a long drought, more of what we love is more of what we love.
Right.
Like, why aren't we just appreciating that we're getting more of it?
Yeah, we actually just did a video on superhero movies. We're both huge superhero fans, and we don't understand why people continuously complain about superhero movies. Why they say this is not good. And my whole thing is, I always say to younger people that I know, I waited 4 years for Superman 4. You get something good every 5 or 6 months. It's better than, like you said, smashing people's heads. It's better than a lot of the other junk out there. A good Star Wars movie or a good Star Trek show is better than nothing at all to me.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. And the other part of it too is people talk about, well, it's not like it was when I was a kid, and it will never be.
No, right.
Because that. Speaking of Walking Dead, Frank Darabont wrote a very interesting article about what he called the golden window.
Right.
He says it's that period between when you're about 9 and 12, when you're old enough to find things on your own, and you begin to discover what lights you up without recommendation. It's like you're not watching this because your folks said to. You were watching because you found it. In his case, it was like The Abominable Dr. Phibes and The Omega Man, which are pretty awful movies, but they hit her in a sweet spot.
I got a weak spot in my heart for Omega Man, though. When you mentioned it
I do too.
in issue 1, I was like, oh, I like Omega Man.
Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it, because that's really when we develop what becomes a lifelong passion for us. Like,
that's right. And then our brains are sponges at that point. Everything that comes in sticks. And nothing that we can absorb now is going to ever stick the way it did when we were 10 years old.
No, you're right. Yeah. I never thought about that.
But from our generation, we were exposed to a lot of stuff like that. Like you said, a lot of sci-fi, a lot of superhero stuff like that. Brian and I are both in real life. We're both teachers, and we are seeing a lack of that in this new generation. They don't sit and watch or involve themselves in things as we did. It's all quick on the internet and watching TikToks and stuff like that. And they don't understand the same things we understand.
We're veering into grumpy old man territory.
We've been going out for a lot lately, because we spend all of our days with, anywhere from 9 to 13-year-olds, and they don't know the things.
But it's a slippery slope. And as a comics creator now, and I'm going to conventions, and most of the comics creators around me are a lot younger. Just as when I was making short films and I was dealing with a lot of 20 and 30-year-olds. And I would never, ever say to anybody, well, it was better when I did it. I try to be respectful. I try to listen. They're coming up with stuff on their own. They have to. Yeah. And we're dependent on them to run the world after we're gone.
We know.
So let's, let's just see what they come up with. But if we can, expose them to something, hey, have you taken a look at this?
Well, Brian makes them watch Star Wars. He has older kids, so he forces them to watch Star Wars throughout the year.
Yeah.
So do you watch it serially, or do you watch all that?
Well, the last time I did it with a class was we did the Machete Cut, where we watched 4, 5, then 2, 3, then 6. And so that way 2 and 3 are a flashback between Empire and Jedi.
Entire movie.
Yeah. But we did it. It was in June, and it was a project about shared fictions, like where they would write their own story set in that universe once they've been exposed to the universe. So it wasn't me just showing movies in a classroom. Everyone, please.
Listen. Some of my best experiences from school were watching movies and then what we talked about afterwards. So
right. Yeah,
that's what we do.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? I can't remember. There was something else I wanted to ask there.
Well, Star Wars plays a part in when we were Trekkies, and the last episode, the last issue of Trekkies takes place in May of 1977.
Oh, so right when,
which is all I'm going to say right there. Yeah. But and I remember when I saw Star Wars, I thought it was unbelievable. I mean, there were more laser beams in the first 10 minutes than I had seen in every movie ever.
Right.
My life.
Yeah. I mean, there's that opening moment with the ship going overhead as if it's coming over you.
Life changing.
That just, everyone got blown away by that whole moment. It did.
Became a different person.
It did. It's funny because I was also through my cousins exposed to the other side of all that at the same time as I was exposed to Star Wars. So there was also Aliens. Planet of the Apes. Yeah. There was also Omega Man. There was also
Alien is one of the
Alien. There we go. Dr. Zayas. Sure.
So, I just did a comic called 1968, A Boy's Odyssey. And it's about my experience when I was 10.
Yeah.
And 3 space voyages that influenced me. This was one of the 3.
Right. Yeah.
So along with that then was, the moon landing.
Sure. The moon landing.
Happening. Mm-hmm. And then, but the one that stayed with me the most and continues to be my touchstone outside of Star Trek. 2001 Space Odyssey.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, so these guys together, when I was 10,
sure,
this is what happened. But it was, we had real life space travel too.
Right. You were really, and people weren't jaded about it.
No.
Yeah. Right. I mean, nowadays it's hard to get anyone interested in the idea that there are presently 6 human beings living in orbit.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, every time I
take it for granted.
Like science
yeah,
fiction.
we get like blown away by it, but most other people are like, who cares? I'm like, really?
Yeah.
They're up there right now.
So now that you're done with When We Were Trekkies, what do you have coming up next? Is there anything else we should look at?
Well, two things. I mean, so I'm actually drawing the last issue right now as we speak, and that'll be out in March. I'm taking it to a Star Trek convention in San Francisco.
Nice.
Very nice.
But I have a couple of stories I want to tell. I'm thinking about doing a graphic novel about being an independent filmmaker.
Okay.
But I think I'm going to actually go back and take the 10 issues of Trekkies and combine them into a full graphic novel and add about 50 pages that I left out.
That, that's actually something I was going to ask if you were going to do a trade. Yeah,
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's probably 2 years away because I want to just do some other stuff, kind of blow the dust out of my brain for a while, and
that's great.
And come back and also I just the quality of the artwork from issue 1 to issue 10 is kind of dramatic. So I'm going to have to go back and redraw at least the first 4 or 5 issues to make it all look like it belongs in the same.
Yeah.
We enjoyed issue 1.
Yeah. Issue 1 is, I'm actually looking forward to getting the rest of them now.
Yeah. I was very disappointed at the end of issue 1 that it ended. I was like, oh, wait. And we didn't realize that that issue 2 was out already.
Yeah.
They only had issue 1.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm going to have to call those guys up and get some more. Next time you're in there, tell them.
Oh, well, they actually watch our channel, so
yeah, they watch us.
They watch us,
so they'll as soon as this is up, they'll know
what's happening. Yeah. Joe, thank you
thanks for your
time. We really appreciate it. This was really fantastic for us, fellow collector.
Oh, thank you. Well, I really love your attitude about collecting, and
thank you.
My whole philosophy is there's so much stuff to collect. Stick to the stuff that was important to you when you were 10.
That's what we do.
Yeah.
The stuff that means something to us. That's what we, it keeps us happy in a world that's not as happy as it used to be. We see it.
I want to look for that Frank Darabont article you brought up. That sounds really interesting.
Sounds like something you would like. But really, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it. Are you any conventions coming up on this side of the country?
I'm looking around. Probably not. The closest I'm going to get is probably Cartoon Crossroads in Columbus in September.
Okay.
Again, I'm not at the point yet where I can be at a big con.
Okay.
Sure.
And really survive. I have to be more indie type cons.
Yeah. If you make it over here, just drop us an email or
let us know.
We'll come out to see you.
Absolutely. I will look you guys up.
We love independent creators and what they're doing in the industry now. So we really appreciate
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And the website again is?
My website is joesikoryak.com, and I'll tell you how to spell that later.
Okay.
And you can order the books directly from Birdcage Bottom Books.
Birdcage Bottom Books.
Very good.
Got it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
Live long and prosper, guys.
Same to you. Live long and prosper.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.